Hey guys, this is Ms. Gutierrez. Today we're going to be reviewing solving an equation with variables on both sides using the distributive property with decimals. So look at this example. We have variables on both sides, on the left and the right. We have x here inside of parentheses, and then we have x here with 0.3 and x with the 0.1. Anytime we have parentheses like this, we want to make sure that we are distributing that number or that factor inside the parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and use my blue color pencil to show you. So here I'm going with with 0.2 times x and then 0.2 times negative 6. Okay? I'm going to use decimals to show you how to multiply the 0.2 times negative 6. But here really, if I don't see a number in front of the x, it's that invisible 1. Okay, so this is really, if I write this down again, I have 0.2 times 1x, or just x. And then I'm going to use the decimals calculator to go 0.2 times negative 6. So showing you, make sure when you're using decimals that you are using the scientific one. So here it is. And I'll put decimal 0.2 times negative 6. I like to always use parentheses when I'm talking or dealing with a negative. It just helps me keep things together. Notice that it gives you an option to leave it as a fraction, as a decimal, or convert it into a fraction. We're going to leave it as a decimal. Okay, so my answer is negative 1.2. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Here it is. Finding my colors. So this is negative 1.2. equals, and I have 0.3x plus 5 minus 3 plus 0.1x. I'm going to use my red color pencil because I'm going to combine like terms. And if you remember, like terms have the same variable to the same power. So if I look at that, that would be, this term here has an x, and so does that term. They both have an x. They both have the same variable to the same power ultimately. So I'm going to end up combining these two. But if you look at this, we also have another set of like terms. We have 5 and negative 3. They don't have a variable because you don't see it. It would be an x to the 0 power. So then these two are like terms. So I'm also going to combine these two. Okay? And I'll show you how to use decimals calculator to get the 0.3 plus a positive 0.1. So we do that, let's combine those two together. So 0.3 plus a positive 0.1. So I'm going back again into my decimals. And I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to do 0.3 plus, and sorry I put times, let me go back, plus a positive 0.1. So that gives me a 0.4. Now again, it's giving you an option of turning it into a fraction, but we don't want to do that. We're going to leave it as a 0.4. So I'm going to go ahead and write 0.4. X, don't forget the x. They both had a term for x. And then this really is just 5 minus 3. And what is 5 minus 3? 5 minus 3 is 2. Positive 2. Okay? Now, I have to get variables on one side. So I always like to move the smaller one. And if you're not sure which one's smaller, 0.2, if I add a 0 next to it, and 0.40, this is bigger than 0.2. So the one I'm going to subtract from both sides would be the 0.2, because I always like to move the smaller one to the other side. Why? It helps me eliminate one extra step when I end up with a negative. So I like to do that first. So I'm going to go ahead and use the red one because I'm going to align them to like terms. So if I subtract the 0.2x from both sides. Remember, 0.2x is the same thing as 0.20x. I'm going to subtract that from this side as well. And notice how I align them with the ones that were like terms. So if I do this, I end up with 0 here. And I didn't do anything here, so I'm going to just bring this term down. Negative 1.2 equals, and then 0.4 minus 0.2. If you're not quite sure what that is, you can again use the calculator really quickly. So I'll put this under, and we will do 0.4 minus 0.2, and that gives me 0.2. So we're going to go ahead and again leave it as a decimal. Don't push the fraction button. So we're going to have 0.2 plus 2. Now I have the variable on one side. So this is going to make it easier for me to solve. One step away or 2 steps away from knowing what x is. Again, my goal is to get this variable by itself. I always start with plus or minus. So if I'm adding 2, I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to use red again because I'm going to make sure that I'm subtracting from the like terms. So when I subtract 2 from here, I got to make sure that I'm subtracting it in the correct term from the correct term on the other side. So in this case, we only have negative 1.2, and they're like terms because both of them don't have any variables. So I'm going to again find out what that is. If you're not quite sure what it is, again, use the decimals calculator, but I can tell you that when you have a minus, they're both negative, you're going to end up having more negatives, right? So you add them and keep the sign. Remember, same sign, add and keep. They both have the same sign, so I'm just going to add them and keep the sign. And I'll show you right now with decimals how that turns out to be. So we go back to decimals. I'm going to clear it. I'm going to go negative 1.2. I like to use, hold on a second, I like to use parentheses. It just keeps it neat. There's the parentheses. Minus, now we have 0.2, or actually just 2, equals. And so we have negative 3.2. So it's a bigger number, but it's still negative because we have a negative and a negative. Remember, same sign, add and keep. So because they're both the same sign, I'm just going to add them and keep them, and my answer was a negative 3.2 equals, I didn't do anything to this. Since I didn't do anything to this, I'm just going to bring it straight down. So this is a 0.2x. 2 minus 2 is just 0. You can add 0 or just leave it alone. I'm going to leave it alone for now. Anytime you see a number in front of a variable, that is multiplication. Okay? Again, that is multiplication. So to undo multiplication, you have to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Notice I'm dividing by a positive and I had a negative. So when I do this, I can show you again in decimals. I know 2 divided by 2 is just 1, but I'll show you what you get here in decimals. So let me put decimals, and I'll clear this, and we are going to divide negative 3.2 by, and we are dividing it by 0.2, or dividing by a positive, let me see, is it, yeah, positive 0.2. So by 0.2, okay, and then that equals, and we end up with negative 16, okay. So again, I'm dividing by a decimal, I'm going to end up with a bigger number instead of a smaller number. So it's negative 16, again, means I have a negative divided by a positive, that gives me a negative, so we're going to have negative 16. So here's negative 16, almost there, put the equal sign, and we said 0.2 divided by 0.2, again I forgot to put the 0.2, I'm so sorry, make sure you are putting the 0.2, that gives me a 1, and 1x or just x, so my answer in this case is x equals negative 16. What type of solution is this? This is a 1 answer, a 1 type of solution, so this is a 1 solution. This has 1 solution. mainly when x equals negative 16. Okay. Well, thank you again, and we'll see each other hopefully pretty soon. Be safe, stay healthy, and don't forget to stay connected.